Welcome everyone to Buddhist Center. If everybody could just mute, that would be fantastic. I feel so fortunate to be here tonight with you to discuss the Lam Rim, stages of the path to enlightenment, that Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche was so kind to be able to teach us week after week after week for decades. And I'm so grateful that I sat next to him and was able to just get a little bit of this that I can try to share with you tonight. Rinpoche always started his teachings with understand that there are persons of three capacities, small, medium, and great. I shall write clearly to identify their characteristics. And that was from Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment. And we see in that small verse that Lord Atisha is able to summarize everything that Lord Buddha ever taught that would show one how to achieve a higher realm rebirth, show one how to achieve complete liberation from samsara, and then how to ultimately achieve complete Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. So wherever one is on a spiritual path, these stages of the path show you how exactly to go from wherever you are to the highest amount of happiness you can achieve, the highest amount of reliability you can achieve. And that state, there's a complete freedom from suffering forever. And that state of the highest amount of reliability, perfect happiness, perfect love, power, compassion, skillful means, and wisdom is only the state of the Buddha. And these teachings that were passed down in the Lam Rim tradition that Lord Atisha says we can just summarize into three categories: the teachings for beings of small, medium, and great capacity, include everything, and they're all passed that Buddha Shakyamuni ever taught, and they're passed down through this incredible lineage of instruction from Buddha Shakyamuni through the extensive deeds and profound view lineage and the lineage of blessings to us. So what is so wonderful about this teaching on the stages of the path to enlightenment? Tonight I'm saying that we're going to only talk about the stages of the path to enlightenment, something that really matters, something that can change our minds and turn them into the perfect state of a Buddha's mind. We're talking about teachings that can really affect us and mean something, as opposed to most of the things that we hear on a daily basis that really have nothing to offer us except more samsara. So this instruction, as Lama Tsongkhapa says in the abbreviated stages of the path to enlightenment, the smaller Lamrim, he says this is the sales pitch. This is what I personally have come to explain this evening. And this is something that Khyentse Geshe Wandak explained over and over and over again, as I said, for decades, and then asked me to continue in however I could, explaining these stages of the path to enlightenment to you. So here we all are, and what do these stages of the path to enlightenment have to offer us? Well, Lama Tsongkhapa says that this instruction on the stage of the path to enlightenment flowed excellently in succession from Nagarjuna and Asanga, crown jewels of all the learned ones of this world. Your banners of fame flutter brilliantly among sentient beings. Among instructions, it's the most precious of all gems, fulfilling all the wishes of beings without exception. It is also the ocean of the most glorious, well-uttered insights, the confluence of 1,000 rivers of excellent treatises. It helps you see all teachings as free of contradiction. It helps all scriptures dawn on you as personal instructions. It helps you easily discover the enlightened intention of the conquerors, and it helps protect you from the abyss of grave negative deeds. Therefore, this most excellent instruction, relied upon by countless fortunate ones like the learned ones of India and Tibet, this teaching on the stages of the path of persons of three capacities, what intelligent person would not be captivated by it? This concise instruction that distills the essence of all scriptures, through reciting it or listening to it for even a single session, you will definitely receive a powerful waves of merit of teaching and hearing the Dharma. So contemplate its meaning. So this is the greatness of the teaching that we're about to hear. And it came from a great author, Lord Atisha, who had excellent qualities that we can read about in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. And then we learn here that this teaching is something that's so rare, and this human basis that we have is so rare, that the time is now to take this advice, heed this advice, take the essence of this life, and transform this human basis into a Buddha, into the state of a Buddha. From this place that you sit right now, from the cushion or the chair or the couch or the car, wherever you're sitting right now, begin to saturate your mind with these stages of the path to enlightenment. And you're moving closer and closer to the destination of perfect happiness and freedom from suffering as soon as you start to apply these teachings on a regular basis. You will see your mind start to transform, and the negative qualities become less, and the excellent qualities become more. Not overnight, not just in 1 year, but over time, if you track your mind and you're really honest with your mind and you look at the mirror of the Dharma and you see what the mirror of the Dharma says your mind should operate like, if you've been trying to make your mind operate like what the Dharma says your mind should operate like, then after a period of time of doing that, nothing becomes more difficult with familiarization. It only becomes easier with familiarization. And having minds of love and compassion and minds that tally with reality become easier and easier the more we familiarize our minds with love and compassion and minds that tally with reality. So the more and more we practice, the more and more we apply these stages of the path to enlightenment, the more we'll see progress and the closer that we'll move to Buddhahood. And we'll know that these teachings work because we'll have cut and rubbed them the way that the Buddha said we should, and not just taken them on blind faith. We will be able to discover exactly what the Buddha discovered by depending on specific stages of the path and by depending on certain elements of knowledge that we won't just naturally come up with, that the Buddha came to present us with 2,600 years ago when he turned the wheel of Dharma in 3 separate times, at the first turning of the wheel of Dharma of the Four Noble Truths, the second turning of the wheel of Dharma of the Heart Sutra, and the third turning of the wheel of Dharma of good differentiation, where he interpreted his own teachings. And we need all of these teachings, and all of these teachings that the Buddha gave, that the Buddha came to this world to give us and teach in various different capacities, are all contained within these stages of the path to enlightenment. And the Buddha came to the world for one reason, and that was to show us how to achieve the state that he achieved, not how to achieve a lesser state. But the Buddha used various means of instruction to lead sentient beings to that final state, various medicines, various means of practice that each individual would need for his or her own personal continuum. Because we know that karma and its results are very, very diverse, and the varieties of experience are very diverse that they create, and the varieties of aptitudes within mind streams are very diverse. And we know that we aren't exactly like other people. We have various affinities. We have things that are bad about us a little more than others are bad about them. And we have things, that are better about us, that are a little better about us than others. But when we look at the kind of mix of our mind, we see that we have our own personal things that need to be unraveled in order for our way of being to tally with reality, in order for us to get rid of the self-cherishing attitude that binds us to a state that isn't perfect happiness. And as soon as we learn to start to cherish others more than ourselves, as soon as we start to learn how to react to all different types of beings, whether they're friends, strangers, or neutrals, in a way that would say, I'd be equally willing to benefit them, then we start to see an evolution of our mind that starts to take place, where we can actually engage in a practice that would lead to cherishing others more than ourselves, and lead to a practice that would make us feel that way about every single sentient being in the universe, and make us understand through logic and reasoning that's the only way we could be happy. The happiest person in the universe would be to love every being in the universe. Our happiness depends upon other sentient beings. So that being said, because this is a Mahayana teaching, and because we know that all of the teachings that Buddha gave lead to one destination, they lead to Buddhahood. Some of the teachings that Buddha gave were giving us a little bit of an island or a reprieve to feel comfortable with, in order to get a rest, to be able to keep going. But that keep going part, the Buddha is assuming is going to go on, and will call us to reach our fullest potential, no matter where we are at all times, because the Buddha will not rest in the enlightened deeds of the Buddha will not rest, and the love and compassion that Buddha has for all sentient beings is always there until there's no object of observation for that feeling of wanting beings to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, wanting beings to be free from omniscientless states, wanting beings to be free from the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. So the only way that we're going to make our minds like a being who thinks that all beings are equally important and that all beings want happiness and the causes of happiness, and the way that I can achieve my perfect happiness and freedom from suffering is by recognizing that cherishing them more than myself is the way to my happiness. So we start to familiarize ourselves with this concept by whenever we do any practice that we're doing, we are engaging in it to try to achieve some state of happiness, some sort of freedom from suffering. And like us, all sentient beings want to have happiness and want to have freedom from suffering. And a Buddha has the ability to emanate bodies to every single sentient being and speak to them into their individual languages and answer whatever question that they ask, simultaneously giving them the exact answer that they need in their own individual languages. So the Buddha has this capacity to go to where all sentient beings are, talk to them in their own individual languages, talk to them at their own individual scope or capacity. The Buddha has this ability to do this. And the way the Buddha got the ability to do this was by first generating the mind that definitely wants to emerge from cyclic existence, and then generating the mind that wants to emerge from the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience that bind one to an omniscientless state. So may we all learn to make our minds first in the stages of the path that shared in common with beings of small capacity to want to get out of the lower realms of cyclic existence and behave accordingly. And then have our minds transform into a mind that wants to get out of cyclic existence altogether and behave accordingly. And then a mind that wants to not only get out of cyclic existence altogether, wants to achieve the state of Buddhahood, where one achieves all of the aims of oneself and others at that moment of becoming a Buddha. So we familiarize our minds more and more and more with minds like a Buddha's mind, and this makes us slowly evolve into that state because we know that we have Buddha nature. We have the proliferating Buddha nature, which is our mind can mature to the state of perfection. We have states of mind that are good, and these states of mind that are good are the ones that will evolve to the perfect states of mind. And the states of mind that are bad are the things that will extract from our mind, the things that will distill from the mind, because these stains, these negativities are adventitious. They aren't the nature of our mind. The nature of our mind is clear light and unsullied. So we can mature these states of mind that we currently have, and then tomorrow maybe they're a little better, and the day after that they're a little bit better, and they're a little bit better, and they're a little bit better. And the way that we gauge it is by doing the practices of equalizing, exchanging self with others, and the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And then when we do practices like this that are just engaged practices where we say, okay, let's now invite all sentient beings to be with us, to engage in this virtue with us, to engage in the hearing of the Dharma, so that all sentient beings have heard something that they can analyze and then meditate on. So we're wanting to have our minds imbued with this idea. So with this thought, imagine that you're inviting every single sentient being in the universe here to share this teaching with, to be able to, you've led them here, just like a Buddha would lead them to the truth of suchness. You've led them to the place where the truth of suchness can be arrived at through the liberating and ripening paths found in the Lam Rim, found in these incredible texts like the Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment, and all of the different commentaries on it, and so forth, and the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, as by Lord Atisha being the root text, with an umbrella of the Abhisama Alamkara by Lord Maitreya over all of it. So we're so fortunate. So imagine you're inviting all sentient beings. You've heard the kind of Dharma that's going to be pronounced. You know you're inviting them somewhere where the most important thing in the universe is going on, a teaching on how to become a Buddha. So you invite people to go places all of the time that aren't the most important place in the world. The most important place in the world is wherever there's a teaching going on where you can hear, you can have more wisdom realization of emptiness from hearing, and then from an analysis, and then from actual meditation. Wherever that's going on, wherever you can figure out how to evolve your mind, that's the most important place to be in the universe. You're inviting all sentient beings to be in that place that's the most important place in the universe, not because I'm here or I'm special, because Buddha Shakyamuni is special. And everything that I'm presenting is something that Buddha Shakyamuni presented. And I have confidence in that because it's been passed down through an unbroken lineage, through the Nalanda Pandits and the great Tibetan masters, and landed in our laps through incredible holy beings like Khenso Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Geshe Lobsang Gompo, Geshe Dorje Damdu Rinpoche, Umzala Geshe Aga Rinpoche, all these holy beings, Jeffrey Hopkins, all these holy beings have spoon-fed us with this information, and we deserve it. We deserve this because we've left tracks in our mind in previous lives to be able to connect with this spoon feeding. We've done work in our previous lives that are setting us up right now to just keep going. And luckily, we've connected to these teachings. We've connected to something that can bring us to a place where our mind tallies with reality. Normally, we will never be brought to that place, but in some point in time in our previous lives, we were brought to that place, and something ripened in this life where we have these 8 incredible leisures, as Lama Tsongkhapa says in the foundation of all good qualities. All of these very rare causes and conditions came together, and we have this opportunity right now, right here. So incredible. We have this Dharma to practice where we can learn about this. So take advantage of it right now, because we know that death is real. Death will come, nothing can stop it. We don't know when, and the only thing that can help us are these instructions, or we're going to keep dying and dying and dying and dying and dying since we've done since beginningless time, and we're going to keep being thrust into a set of aggregates, into a set of body and speech and mind, or at least mind beyond our control, in this lack of freedom state, because we aren't choosing it, and we'll be forced again and again and again and again, like buckets on a water wheel, to turn over and over and over again through cyclic existence, how Chandrakirti says. So we're inviting sentient beings to hear this Dharma, which is the opposite of the thing that you would hear normally in life that keeps you in this perpetual cycle of suffering. Birth, aging, sickness, and death, separating from the pleasant, meeting with the unpleasant, not getting what you want, and the suffering of the appropriated aggregates over and over and over and over and over again. Most of the stuff that we hear, most of the stuff that we believe is just all stuff that we chase after or push away. And that chasing after and pushing away is just causing more and more cyclic existence. Here we are tonight to do something that is leading us away from that state. So with that being said, imagine you invite all sentient beings here to be your guest. In the language of the gods, Nagas, and Yaksas, in the language of demons and of humans too, and however many kinds of speech there may be, I shall proclaim the Dharma in the language of all. So now you've invited all sentient beings here to be your guest, to hear this teaching, to be able to have something that they can then contemplate and analyze. Rejoice in the fact that you're having this idea of sharing a gift. Normally, when we get something that's so precious, we lock it up. We don't want anyone else to have it. But we've just know that we're receiving and have received in the past the most precious gift in the world that anyone could ever give us. And that's the gift of the Dharma. And this is a gift that if we learn how to share this, we can have perfect happiness, perfect love, compassion, skillful means, reliability, and wisdom. Wow. And that's not just some fairy tale. This is cause and effect and logic and reasoning that you can work out yourself. that you don't have to have blind faith in and just recite something or just say, please help me. You can help yourself, and you can engage in a cognitive evolution. You can change your mind. You can change your mind this week, this month, this year, next year, more and more and more. And J. Milarepa is an example of a being who had a body like ours, who in one lifetime, just like the lifetime we have, had some special stuff, imprints and so forth, and a very special connection to a teacher. But in one lifetime, took a body like this and transformed it into the body of a Buddha. Somehow, there's a big debate about how, but transformed from the state that I'm in into the state of Buddhahood in one lifetime, in a body like ours. Obviously, the body transforms somehow or another from an impure to a pure. We're so fortunate. So now get into the 7-point Vairocana posture, because we're going to hear the Dharma. It's a position that's conducive to having your mind as clear as possible. All of your channels and blood and oxygen, everything aligns in the best way possible. So the physical basis that you have is the most conducive to having your mind clear. And we know that we need a clear mind if we want to listen to the Dharma properly. We want to abandon all of the ideas that are found in the Lam Rim about the 3 pots. We don't want to have a mind that isn't listening, is just saying, I'm not going to listen to what this person's saying. We might as well not come. I'm not going to listen. We don't want to have a mind that's like this. So when we're sitting in this place where we can have the clearest state of mind, we can really check, is our mind like this? Is our mind closed right now? Is our mind half here, where the contents of what the teacher is saying is just slipping out because we're half here, we're half somewhere else. We're not really paying attention. We think that we already know this information, but there may be one sentence that's said tonight that may be the key to open your door to the next stage of your spiritual evolution. So if you're missing something, you might miss that sentence. That's the problem with that leaky pot. You might miss exactly what it is that you need to hear in order to transform your mind, in order to have an aha moment, in order to say, wait a second, this kind of does make sense, cherishing others more than myself. I can see how if I could love someone and have that kind of moment of bliss with them, if I could then have that kind of feeling multiplied times every being in the universe, what would that bliss be like? What would that happiness be like? Maybe you're going to miss something. So you need to be paying attention. Your mind needs to be clear. Or another opportunity you could have to mess this up, listening mess up, is to come in with all these ideas, these preconceived notions about this is this, that's that. Oh, I don't believe in this, or I don't believe in that. And you don't have an open mind. So these ideas that you already have are contaminating what you're hearing. Because you have this chatter going on. How can you possibly hear all the stuff that's coming in? And then the stuff that's coming in gets polluted by your kind of mind with these preconceived notions. And then the information that you've received has now become polluted. So it's so important to start with a clear mind when you listen to the Dharma. Start with a clear mind before you do your meditation. You're not just trying to do time like you're in a jail. You're trying to take every moment of the time that you're at a teaching to figure out how you could then, after the teaching, make every single moment of your life a moment where you're planting a seed of virtue in your mental continuum. You're leaving an imprint in your mental continuum that's moving closer to tallying your way of thinking and way of experiencing the world, tallying with reality. So it's so important. So in this Vairocana posture, imagine that all sentient beings are here following this instruction, trying to listen as intently as they possibly can to these stages of the path to enlightenment that are so rare. It's taken so many causes and conditions to come together, as I've said, to hear them. And just rejoice in the fact that you have this precious human basis. Rejoice in the fact that you can hear them. And that should intensify your willingness to listen. You have this human basis. The way to take the essence of this human base is to engage in the teachings for beings of 3 capacities. In order to engage in those teachings, I have to understand so clearly what they are and what each stage of the path so clearly is. And the only way I'm going to know that is if I hear the information correctly, if I learn it correctly. This is what's so, so important. And anybody who's on the applications, I see a couple questions coming in. It's too far away from me to be able to see all of them, but I saw one go by, and I'll try to address the topic of rebirth and so forth. So when we think about this opportunity that we have, and we think about since beginningless time, we've been in cyclic existence, that this moment's consciousness came from a previous moment's consciousness. If you're still on TikTok, came from a previous moment's consciousness that came from a previous moment's consciousness. Nothing in a class other than consciousness could create consciousness. So we can't say that consciousness can be created by something that's in a dissimilar class. Consciousness must be what is the immediately preceding condition of consciousness. And when we begin to trace consciousness back, and I'm not saying that tonight you're going to then believe that there's past lives, or you're going to believe, but don't deny the existence straight out. Don't say that's like the dirty pot saying there's no way this can be true. Say, hey, maybe this can be true. Maybe it's not true. But Dharmakirti says the way that we can, in the Pramanavartika Karika, the way that we can start to evolve our minds to a place where they tally with reality, because according to the Buddha, the previous lives are true. And you don't just believe them because someone said so. You believe them based on analysis that can take years. Some people are more connected to the idea that there are previous lives and that there are future lives than others. But if you're not connected to that at all, you use Dharmakirti's logic and reasoning. This moment's consciousness came from a previous moment's consciousness that came from a previous moment's consciousness that came from a previous moment's consciousness. And if we begin to trace consciousness back, we won't be able to find a beginning. We won't be able to find a first moment. We can't say that it was created by something other than it. And if it was created by something other than it, we would have to have the same qualities of that creator. We would have to be perfect and be able to create a world. We would have to have these qualities that we were kind of created with. Our results are concordant with causes. Consciousness can cause consciousness, but perfection can't cause imperfection. It's just not the way that cause and effect works. And I think that we can all agree that there is a law, there's an order to things in conventional reality. There's conventions, there's things that operate in a specific fashion of cause and effect. And we can't put water with water and wonder why we don't have chocolate milk. We can't put something that isn't like the result that we're looking for. It doesn't have anything to do with the result that we're looking for, and put a couple things together that don't have anything to do with the result we're looking for in terms of imputed designation, and then expect to get some sort of result we're looking for. So we try to start to apply this idea of cause and effect to the consciousness itself. And we say that this moment's consciousness is, you just can't find a beginning when you start that analysis. And when you look at the actual sense powers themselves, they came from previous sense powers, I don't mean the eyeballs. I mean the things that's empowering them, this kind of invisible, subtle substance that's allowing cognition to take place, that's empowering the eye consciousness and so forth to observe an object, because there's an immediately preceding consciousness that can make all of that happen. So this sense power had to come from a previous sense power, from a previous sense power, from a previous sense power, from a previous sense power. And when we start to try to find where the beginning of sense power is, we have to say either it comes from something that's from a dissimilar class, which is illogical, or it had to be created by a previous moment of itself in a continuum. So this existing, this kind of form, this consciousness existing in temporal moments and tracing it back, and the temporal moments of the sense power, and then the temporal moments of the breathing, the subtlest of breathing, the potential to breathe had to come from a previous kind of potential to breathe. And when we look at the mother's and father's contribution, we can see that yes, the physical form And there's some karmas that make us have similarities. But if our consciousness came from our parents, if our parents were geniuses, we should be geniuses. I should know what my parents know. If my consciousness is my mother's and father's consciousness, I should know what they know. But that's just not the case. There's so many examples where there's genius kids, not so genius parents, not so genius kids, and all the varieties and complexities that can possibly happen. And we see that there has to be something that's creating this variety, that's creating this difference. And there's a complex network of causes and conditions that are creating this existence, that's creating me talking to you right now and you listening to me right now, and not listening to any of the other 8 billion human beings in the universe. You're listening to me. There's something very different. There's a variety of things that are happening that are causing us to perceive things the way that we are, and are allowing us to see the things that we're seeing, are making us propelled to be inspired by the things that we're inspired by. And these things come from previous imprints and previous seeds, according to Buddha, that we planted in our previous lives. And in our previous lives, we engaged in actions. And those actions left imprints, memories in our mind that then, when the time is right and the causes and conditions are there in some lifetime, some karmas we create are really powerful and we experience them in this life. Some karmas we create are a little less powerful, but very powerful, and we experience them in our immediate next life. And then some karmas we engage in this life are not as powerful, but are karmas, so they're planted. And those things that are planted in our continuum, unless there's an opposing force, will give rise to a result, a concordant result, behavioral results, environmental results, fruitional results, all kinds of different results. So we've planted these seeds of a potential result in our mind since beginningless time. And we're planting more of these seeds every time we act, when we are attached, or when we have aversion, or we engage in virtuous activities. When we're doing things like this, we're leaving imprints, leaving seeds in our mind that we'll experience a ripening result of before. Here we are tonight, listening to a Dharma teaching, connecting to some of the most subtle Dharma in the universe. Obviously, this comes from a concordant cause. So we start to look at how things could come into being, how things couldn't come into being, and it starts to give us more conviction in the idea of previous lives. So this is all that I can offer you right now. It's just this idea that the moments of consciousness, trying to trace them back and find a beginning, wondering if something from a dissimilar class, something that isn't consciousness, could create it, something different, could different things. Could an apple seed create a mango tree? So we start to look at this. We start to ask ourselves these questions. And then there's a variety of testimonials people have had where they say, oh, I remember this or I remember that. And some of them are very convincing and actually have scientific data on them. So we can use this to kind of give us a little bit of more of an idea about, wow, maybe there are previous lives, maybe there are future lives. We see that this mind, this consciousness, doesn't have a beginning or have an end. It's the kind of impermanent phenomena that just never ends. I know that sounds funny, right? You hear impermanent, you think ends. There's a type of impermanent phenomena that just never ends. It just goes from one moment to the next. This continuum of mind just goes from one moment to the next, one moment to the next. This physical body ends. So what happens is this physical body ends, but there's still a mental consciousness in there that isn't the same as the physical body. The mind isn't the body. The form aggregate isn't the consciousness. So the consciousness then, if the physical body dies, the consciousness is just abiding in time, temporal moments. Time doesn't end. Time doesn't stop. So something that's just abiding in these temporal moments and is of the type that doesn't end, it isn't the type of impermanent phenomena that just naturally comes to an end, like 2023 3 did. It's not the kind of impermanent phenomena that comes to an end if you stop it, like the ignorant states of mind can come to an end. Cyclic existence can come to an end because it's the type of impermanent phenomena that when it's met with a countering force, it can come to an end. But the mind doesn't come to an end. The mind doesn't have a beginning. So that's what I have for you about that. Now we're in the 7-point Vairocana posture, and imagine that the entire merit field begins to fill in front of you, that you and all sentient beings are experiencing the most amount of love and compassion that you've ever experienced because you're looking into the eyes of Buddhas. So imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni comes into the space in front of you, His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Imagine Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, Geshe Lobsang Gompo Rinpoche, Demo Locho Rinpoche, Khenser Lobsang Gyatso Rinpoche, imagining Geshe Dorje Damdula Rinpoche, imagining Umzala Geshe Aga Rinpoche, imagining Jeffrey Hopkins Rinpoche, imagining Lama Zopa Rinpoche, imagining Genpal Dendrapa Rinpoche, imagining Geshe Yeshe Tapke Rinpoche, all of these holy beings that we're so fortunate to have in our world, or are so fortunate to have been blessed with their presence at some point in time in our lives. We're just so lucky. Imagine they're in the space in front of you and looking. If you've had a root lama and you've had a connection with the teacher, I know with Khenser Geshe Wandak, I never felt more loved by anyone than by Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche. I never felt someone cared for me more in my life than my relationship with my lama, Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche. And imagine that love. I'm imagining the love that I saw in the eyes of my teacher, I'm looking at right now. And imagine that all of the holy beings begin to fill in the space in front of you, that we have so much need to connect with more. We have so much of a need for this. And the way that we create this condition is by familiarizing our minds with calling them, familiarizing our minds with this kind of excellent lineage that's been passed down to us through these holy beings. They're our spiritual family. They're the beings who love us more than we've ever loved ourselves. All they want for us to have is perfect happiness and to be free from suffering. And they've come to this world to write in a variety of ways and teach in a variety of ways to help us to be able to transform because they love us so much. So these are the kind of beings we're imagining are in the space in front of us. Imagine the beings from the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Lord Maitreya and Asanga and Basu Bandhu and Dignaga and Darpa Kirti and Vimuktasena and Haribhadra and Shakyaprabha and Gunaprabha. Imagining Lama Salimpa and Lord Atisha and Drontompa. Imagining the beings of the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri and Arya Nagarjuna. Buddha Palita and Arya Deva and Chandrakirti and Shanti Deva. Imagining Baba Vega. Imagining Yana Garba and imagining Kamala Shila. Imagining Chandarashita. And again, Lama Salimpa, Lord Atisha, Drone Tompa, all these holy beings in the space in front of you, all of these beings' names you've heard before if you've read the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, or you've heard teachers mention their names, or implicitly, you may not have heard their names, but you've heard their teachings by hearing these teachings on the stage of the path to enlightenment. The teachings passed down through the lineage of blessings from Vajradhara to Saraha and Maitripa and Tilopa and Naropa and Jitsun Marpa and Milarepa and Jekam Popa. All of these holy beings in the space in front of you. All of these masters. Imagine Drone Tompa, the lay person. We say, oh, I'm a lay person, I can't do this. Well, Lord Atisha passed down the entire Lamrim lineage through a lay person. Imagine that Drone Tompa is passing down the Lamrim lineage to the old Kadampas, the 3 old Kadampa lineages. Imagine all the holy beings of the Nyingmas, Padmasambhava and Lochemba and Mipam, the Sakya Pandita, Sakya Kanganipo, Sakya Randawa, the Kaju, the Karmapa, Jagampopa, the Galupa, Lama Tsongkhapa, Kirtubje, Jelsubje, Basuchuji Jitsin, Penchen Sonandrapa, Jayan Cheba, Janjaropi Dorje, Gonchu Jinping Wampo, Jitsumpa, Seventh Dalai Lama, all of these holy beings, highest Yoga Tantra deities, performance Tantra deities, action Tantra deities, all the 35 Buddhas and all the protector deities are here in the space in front of us. Now with this blessing and with this feeling of immense love, imagine that you and all sentient beings just have this mind of bliss from being able to look into the most loving beings in the universe's eyes. Now we'll recite the Heart Sutra, imagining that we and all sentient beings are here listening to the Heart Sutra. But here isn't the living room you're in or whatever place you're in. You're imagining that you're on Vulture Peak Mountain where this Heart Sutra is being proclaimed. And that Buddha Shakyamuni and Chenrezig and Shariputra are right there, and all the assembly of the gathered beings in the universe listening to this, all of the holy beings. And imagine simultaneously that Buddha Shakyamuni in another place is giving the Kala Chakra initiation. Imagine all these beings are assembled and hearing these teachings in their various capacities, hearing the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. We're imagining that we're at Rajagriha and Vulture Peak Mountain and rejoicing in the Buddha's excellent qualities to be able to teach so many things simultaneously. And this is why I mentioned this about the Kala Chakra. This Buddha's excellent quality that we talked about being able to go to wherever the beings who are ready to hear things are. So we imagine that we're at Vulture Peak Mountain and at Rajagriha, and we're able to hear Buddha Shakyamuni speak, and we're able to hear Chenrezig and Shariputra engage in this dialogue that's been blessed by the Buddha, that's considered the speech of the Buddha, where he illuminates the actual definitive teaching. The Buddha teaches the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena. The Buddha teaches us exactly what we need to know about every single thing in the universe that we don't know right now. We superimpose something onto everything in the universe that isn't there, and it's called true existence, inherent existence. And the Buddha came to show us that these things lack inherent existence, but exist subjectively, conventionally. And this is so important. So many wrong teachings are given about selflessness, where people say self doesn't exist. That's absolutely incorrect. The Buddha never said the self doesn't exist. The Buddha said the mode of existence of the self doesn't exist the way you think that it does. So this is what the Heart Sutra comes to differentiate. Because at the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, the Buddha said that the Four Noble Truths exist truly. And the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, the Buddha said that the nothing in the whole universe exists truly. So there was a refinement of the teaching that was given. There was something that needed to be added to the first turning of the wheel of Dharma in order to make it a complete teaching. There was something that needed to be added. Just the 16 attributes of the Four Noble Truths realized by an Arya will not get you out of cyclic existence. You have to realize the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena. And this needs to be added to the understanding of the Four Noble Truths, to understand that the first, second, third, and fourth Noble Truth are empty of inherent existence, but exist conventionally, subjectively. And we have to find out what that means and not try to oversimplify it and think that that means that things don't exist. Because if we answer the question, do things exist, and say no and think that we're talking about Buddhism, we are not. We're talking about nihilism. So it's so important to find out what the object of negation is, what we're trying to find. When we engage in ultimate analysis, what are we trying to find? We're trying to find inherent existence. Inherent existence is the object of negation. And when we move closer to ourselves, others, or other phenomena other than persons, we find when we subject ourselves, others, and phenomena other than persons to ultimate analysis, we won't find that they exist the way that we perceive them to exist They appear to exist to us. We apprehend them to exist. And this superimposition of true existence, inherent existence, that we kind of do on top of all phenomena conceals. So this conventional reality is concealing something about everything. So we have to figure out what that thing is that it's concealing. No, we are not all God. So we have to find out what that's concealing. We have to find out what it is that isn't tallying with reality about the way that we see things, because it's our misapprehension of things. It's our addition of inherent existence to things, this reification of true existence that we do. Our sense consciousness sees them to apprehend. Our eye consciousness is collecting the data incorrectly. Our eye consciousness sees things to inherently exist. They appear to. And our mind apprehends them and says to inherently exist. And we don't even know it. We don't walk around saying that this is what's going on. But when we start to look at what the Buddha said is our problem in the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge, we see that there's something going on with the way that we're experiencing our reality that isn't correct. And not because the Buddha said it's not correct, because when we engage in analysis, we come to find out that the way that we think things exist is wrong. Not because the Buddha said it, because when we apply the formulas of ultimate analysis and conventional analysis, we can find flowers, and we can find flowers that are empty of inherent existence. We can find the emptiness of inherent existence of flower. If we look with conventional analysis, we can find flowers. If we use ultimate analysis, we find the emptiness of inherent existence of flower. Ultimate analysis has no business saying whether the flower exists or not. Ultimate analysis is just trying to see if the flower inherently exists, somehow within its parts or something separate than its parts. And the entailment of emptiness is if we find that something doesn't intrinsically exist within its parts or intrinsically exist as separate from its parts, that the thing doesn't intrinsically exist objectively from its own side, able to hold itself up, because it's not that thing we think can hold itself up. Objective existence, existence right within the object, self-establishment, that doesn't exist when we subject it to ultimate analysis. And when we see that we're misapprehending everything around us, we'll see what's creating the patterns of our thinking that are so screwy, why we become so attached to things, why we can become so angry at things. Why is it that all of these negativities arise? It's because we misapprehend ourselves and everything around us to believe that it inherently exists, and then we have inappropriate attention that then starts to say, oh, this is really nice. Oh, this is really ugly. And the reason we think it can be nice or ugly is because we think it inherently exists from its own side. And we inherently exist from our own side. We cling to ourselves and cherish ourselves because we think that we inherently exist from our own side. So when we start to apply this analysis to see that we find we don't. And what comes from this misunderstanding that says, oh, this thing is really nice or this thing's really bad. There couldn't be that without the conceptuality that this thing has a mode of existence from its own side that's good or bad. And as soon as we start to have this attention that says, oh, this thing exists from its own side, we aren't even thinking we're doing this, but we are. I exist from my own side. I'm me, you're you. There's bifurcation. And this is what, and that chair over there exists from its own side. That's a good chair, or that's a bad chair. That is an inherently existent chair. Let me make a judgment about it and put a value on it, because it's something that can have a value because it exists from its own side. If it's subjective, then I'm making the value. That's where you start to go, well, wait a second. Well, is it objective? Is it subjective? we go back to that. How do we find out? We subject it to ultimate analysis and see if it can be found objectively right within the object. So what's going on? So we go back and forth and we're saying, okay, I think this thing is so great from its own side, but I think I might be making it up. Okay, well, what happens if that's happening? I think it's so great from my own side, then I become attached to it. I think it's horrible from its own side, I push it away. And in the midst of that, those afflictions are causing me then to behave somehow. Pushing, pulling. And then I engage in actions, contaminated actions that lead to more cyclic existence. More cyclic existence. And this is, if everybody could mute, and this leads to more cyclic existence. And the undoing of it is to reverse that process and see that all of the gross afflictions that are coming up are being driven by the very, very subtle thing. And this is self-grasping ignorance. That's then creating an inappropriate attention that then causes you to be attached, causes you to have aversion, causes you to have pride. I am the king. I am the king of the worst. I am the king of the best. Pride can be, I'm the worst or I'm the best. It causes us to think like this. So the undoing of a thinking that isn't accurate is what we all must do. If we want to stop acting in a way that causes us to suffer. And eventually, really, really cause us to want to love and have compassion for every single sentient being in the universe. Because of recognizing that everyone else is just as blind. Wow. We've been operating like this since beginningless time. And wanting someone to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, someone's asking a question, how could a police officer operate under these conditions of, cherishing others more than themselves? A police officer who cherishes someone more than themselves, who loves someone, who has compassion for them, wishes someone to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, and they will lock someone up in order to make sure that they don't create more non-virtuous karma because of compassion. If you're operating from the basis of compassion, then you're not operating from the basis of mean. If you're operating from the basis of wanting a being to have happiness and the causes of happiness, you're operating from the basis of love. Wanting to have happiness and the cause of happiness and be free from the suffering and the causes of suffering doesn't mean that you don't intervene. They could harm other sentient beings that you're now also worrying about because you're non-biased, and they're harming someone else is going to hurt them. So anything that you engage in, you can operate within the framework of love and compassion. And conventionally, still, the world works just fine. And everything is orderly. Because you're recognizing that things subjectively exist. There is a subjective existence that we all agree upon. This is a book. This is a hand. We all agree upon this. And when we apply these deeper roots of wisdom to it, to understand that everybody is being motivated by karma and afflictions, that the person who's acting out that needs to be arrested is not under their own control. They're under the control of the afflictions. They aren't their afflictions. You develop compassion for that person. You treat them with dignity and respect because you love them and you want them to be free from suffering. And you simultaneously stop them from harming others. And that's how you could do so in this world. And this doesn't just sound like hippie stuff, kind of idealistic things. No, this is laser-like wisdom being applied. It's not just, just love everybody and then just let anybody do whatever they want. No, it's having compassion and recognizing that actions have consequences. Non-virtue leads to suffering. Virtue leads to happiness. Harming others leads to suffering. This is how you would operate. Sorry if I'm getting distracted, but I'm seeing good questions come in. And what else should we be doing other than helping each other evolve? Helping us, move to a state beyond the state that we're in. Ultimately, there is no good or bad. And ultimate analysis isn't have any business looking for good or bad. It's only looking for inherently good or inherently bad. But there is good and bad conventionally. Virtue leads to happiness, non-virtue leads to suffering. Results are concordant with their causes. Your experiences of happiness, you can conventionally say are happy. Your experiences of suffering, you can conventionally say are suffering. But there's no intrinsically existent happiness or suffering. Intrinsic existence and existence don't mean the same thing. And this is why so many people just don't know what they're talking about. And they're presenting Buddhism all over the internet. And it's just not the way that the Buddha presented it. And they haven't had systematic studies. They've had a few studies, and they start talking. And it's not accurate. It's not me being judgmental. It's me stating a fact. It's me stating a fact. So there is good conventionally. There is bad conventionally. Good things lead to good results. Bad things lead to bad results. Poison is poisonous. So we have to get out of this idea that we're always in this ultimate. Well, things aren't ultimately this or ultimately that. We have to know what that means, first of all, when we say they're not ultimately this or ultimately that. And that doesn't mean that they don't exist as good or bad conventionally. The Heart Sutra never, ever came to tell us that in conventional reality, there's no virtue. There's no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no appearance, no sound. The Buddha wasn't crazy. The Buddha wasn't a nihilist. The Buddha wasn't like, oh, once you leave samsara, you just disappear. There were some teachings given like that, but those were teachings that were given to scope. The final view is that everybody becomes a Buddha, has their own perfect Buddha land, and has the ability to spontaneously help all sentient beings and emanate bodies in realms where really, really highly realized bodhisattvas are, and emanate bodies to bozos like me and try to help me. So the Buddha isn't just disappear. The Buddha is actually the most actively engaged individual in the universe because he takes as many bodies as he or she can and emanates them to as many beings as he or she can help, if those beings have the karma to be able and the conditions to be able to be met with that enlightened being. Buddhas are not omnipotent and cannot change your karma. Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It's by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. So the Buddha teaches us how to discover the truth that the Buddha discovered, so that we can then fulfill all of our needs and all of sentient beings' needs simultaneously by achieving that resultant state. So the Heart Sutra is telling us about what ultimate analysis finds. And ultimate analysis doesn't find an intrinsically existent eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, speech, appearance. It's looking, ultimate analysis is looking for an object that exists from its own side, a self that exists from its own side, able to hold itself up. Ultimate analysis is looking for that kind of thing, that kind of eye, that kind of ear, that kind of nose. And ultimate analysis doesn't find it. So it says there's no eye, no ear, no nose. But it's not looking for anything other than intrinsically existent eye, ear, nose, tongue, mind, body, etc. It's not having any business in saying whether the thing exists or not. You're seeing if intrinsic existence exists. Does inherent existence exist? Is the object, is the self a person, self a phenomena, able to hold itself up from its own side the way it appears to me to do? And the Buddha says no. Your ultimate analysis will find out no, but your ultimate analysis won't have any business saying whether or not the ear or the eye conventionally exists. That's up to conventional analysis. And conventional analysis finds flowers, conventional analysis finds good, conventional analysis finds bad. and we can all agree upon it. Is taking poison good? Everyone just went, no. That's conventional analysis. Is taking poison intrinsically good? Well, that's for, or intrinsically bad. That's for ultimate analysis to figure out. So I encourage you all to not be satisfied with partial instructions and to really figure out what these things are talking about. And don't, if somebody hasn't studied for quite a long time, I really would caution you to hear what they're saying and hold on to it. I would caution you to listen to anything I'm saying without cutting and rubbing it, because Buddha would say you're a stupid student if you're doing that. I told you, take the teachings, cut and rub them, and look at them and see if they're accurate. See if you discover that this is true or not. And once you discover it's true, then you can say, oh, I'm a student of the Buddha and I practice Buddhism. I practice this view. But don't say you're a student of the Buddha until you've discovered whether or not this stuff tallies with reality. So I encourage you to seek whether or not it does. And I can say that from my experience, it's been indispensably helpful in lessening some of my really gross ways of behaving that I don't act like anymore, or I don't do anymore, because of the reflection on bodhicitta and emptiness. I haven't realized emptiness. I haven't realized bodhicitta. I haven't realized renunciation, but I've realized some of the things that are necessary to be foundations for those big realizations. And I know that I had the true reliance upon a spiritual teacher. And that's the first topic in the Lam Rim. A lot of topics in the Lam Rim, but that's the first topic in the Lam Rim. And I realize that I believe that I had that conviction. And I believe that throughout my day. And it's something that, because I know that, and if I can ingrain that in my mind, I will be okay, and I can succeed on the path. And had a little bit of a rejoicing in this leisure and opportunity that I have when I wake up in the morning. So these things keep me going, and a little bit of a less grasping at things, to not be coming, that as a little bit less grasping at things, to kind of all just be coming at me from their own side, and the ability to kind of take a moment and say, are they? So this has been really helpful. And then hidden within this Heart Sutra are the paths, the ripening paths that we have to go through. Not the liberating path is the realization of emptiness, but the ripening paths are things like renunciation, bodhicitta, the concentrations, the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation, and path of no more learning. So hidden within this incredible sutra is not only the definitive teaching on the nature of reality, but hidden within it is also the teaching on the five paths, the bodhisattva paths that you have to go through in order to become a Buddha. So tonight we were going to get into bodhicitta, but we probably won't be able to because we did more introduction. But I wanted to get to some of the questions that I actually saw on the screen there. Yes, so the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha of Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of Sangha monks and a great gathering of Sangha Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One had the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Brajaparamita, saw in this way, saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Brajaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice profound Prajaparamita, should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation, there is no impurity, no purity, there is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness. See right there, in emptiness, there is no form. When you're having in emptiness, when you engage in ultimate analysis, first conceptually, you start to realize the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena. And then you have a direct realization of the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena. You have a direct realization of emptiness, a yogic direct perception. And in that yogic direct perception, you're only perceiving the lack of inherent existence, a non-affirming negative. That is what you are seeing. You're seeing a non-affirming negative. You aren't seeing any other phenomena. You aren't seeing the I, the form, the feeling, the perception. You're not realizing anything other than the non-affirming negative, which is the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena. So the Buddha's not talking about conventional reality here. The Buddha's talking about the ultimate mode of existence of phenomena, empty of inherent existence. That's the ultimate mode of existence. Does the emptiness of inherent existence exist ultimately? No. Emptiness is empty, but that's for another time. Thus, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind conscious dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of Prajaparamita, fully awakened to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajaparamita mantra is said in this way: Teata om gate gate, paragate, parasangate, bodhisoha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised Noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, "Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is." One should practice the profound Prajaparamita, just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and Noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Kala jibe ne jodamba ne ngushe de chung ai de do jen du ba ba lama yi rusun zi ne song gandro zo la sha selo agasamara jasan razame agama. Agasamara jasan razamara be te adon gati gati barakati parasangati buddhizo ababa konchu sanji kai de mi dorje she no dorje mego dorje shewa dorje dragi baji metu bishu danje shedding gorye zo agerin don dorje shewa da mitu ne be jin dan ro dan don ba jin bun zon zon jorji daji de jan den da le sho. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. And when you're at a teaching and you do the refuge prayer, think through the merit I create by listening to the Dharma. So we want to direct everything at its appropriate place. So it looks like we're don't have a lot of time left. Does anybody have any questions on the Zoom that you want to ask before I go any further? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Okay, so we've been looking at the Lama Tsongkhapa's source of all my good. Let's spend about 10 minutes tonight on this. And we've been going through stanza by stanza, and we made it up to the calm abiding special insight, and then some new people joined, and I said, let's do it again, and we'll make our way back to the union of calm abiding and special insight section. So we started over, and what I'll do is let's read the entire text, and then what I'd like to also do is show you the context in which you can apply another text to it. So the source of all my good, and so Pabunka Rinpoche's, I'll just give you Pabunka Rinpoche's categories as we get to the stanzas that he says they fall under, because we were using Pabonka Rinpoche Dorje Chang's commentary on the foundation of all good qualities, source of all my good. And he says there's 4 categories. So it begins with, the source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to him in the proper way is the very root of the path, and grant me then to serve and follow him with all my strength and reverence. So here, this falls into the first category. Pabonka Rinpoche says is there, the very root of the path, which is how to take a Lama and serve him or her properly. So this is the first category. Then we get into the second category, which is how to train your mind once you've taken on a Lama. So bless me first to realize the excellent life of leisure I found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. So we recognize here that we have this life of leisure and opportunity. And we have so much potential right at this very moment because we have the 8 leisures. We don't have circumstances which keep us from religious activities, which keep us from the spiritual endeavors, which keep us from being able to engage in the practice for beings of 3 capacities. And when we look at the Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, after he outlines the life of leisure and opportunity, he tells us what we can do with it in a summarized fashion by showing us the teachings for beings of 3 capacities, almost like handing out flyers that this is what you could do with your human basis. This is what you could do. And this falls into the section, we would say, of the teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. But where we get into this actual instructions of the small scope, we start to see the topics the first topics of the first topics of the spirit relying on a spiritual teacher and life of leisure and opportunity are found in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. Under the small scope, how to lead students through the actual instructions. That 4th category begins with the relying on the teacher and then goes into meditation and life of leisure and opportunity and so forth. So we see that this is all subsumed under the small scope in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. All these are still, everything I'm reading is subsumed under the small scope. My body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon, and help me find sure knowledge that after I've died, the things I've done, the white or black, and what those deeds will bring to me, follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Grant me then ever to be careful to stop the slightest wrongs of the many wrongs we do, and try to carry out instead each and every good of the many that we may. In Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, we started the teaching with it. Understand there are persons of 3 capacities, small, medium, and great. I shall write clearly to identify their individual characteristics. This section deals with the individual characteristics of the teachings for beings of small capacity. And Lord Atisha says that know that those who by whatever means seek for themselves no more than the pleasures of cyclic existence are persons of least capacity. So this particular capacities are for beings who wish to have higher realm rebirth in their next life and renounce lower realm rebirths. So these are the teachings that the Buddha gave to show us how to achieve the goals of higher realm rebirth. And when we look at Lama Tsongkhapa's little bit bigger Lamrim, this is only 14 stanzas, so this is very small. We find that the small scope section reads as follows. The root of creating well the auspicious conditions for all the good things of this and future lives is to rely properly with effort in both thought and action on the sublime spiritual teacher who reveals the path. Seeing this, never forsake him or her even at the cost of your life, and bless them with the offering of following their advice. I, a yogi, practiced in this manner. You who aspire to liberation should do likewise. So we see these are teachings that are shared in common with beings of small capacity, because if you want to do the practices for medium folks or great folks, you have to have realized these teachings. So Lama Tsongkhapa is saying, I did this. I realized that the foundation of all good qualities is the Lama. If you want to be liberated, if you want Buddhahood, because we're talking about Buddhahood in this case, if you want the realization that Lama Tsongkhapa is going for or got or would achieve in the Bardo, depending on how you figure it out, it's Buddhahood. If you want Buddhahood, you have to first see that the foundation of everything is relying on a teacher. Anytime you want to learn something, you need a teacher. And if you want to learn something that's super complex, that needs to that's an antidote for something super complex. You need someone to know who what they're talking about, because this life of leisure is far more precious than a wish-granting jewel. Finding such an existence happens just this once, hard to find, and yet like a flash of lightning, it easily vanishes. Contemplating this, you must see all mundane pursuits like empty grain husks floating on the wind. And you must extract the essence of your human life. I, a yogi, practiced in this manner. You who aspire to liberation should do likewise. There's no certainty you will elude birth in the lower realms after death. Protection from such terror lies in the three jewels alone. Make firm, therefore, the practice of going for refuge and ensure that its precepts are never eroded. This depends in turn on fully contemplating positive and negative karma and their effects, and on perfectly observing the ethical ideal. I, a yogi, practice in this manner. You who aspire to liberation should do likewise. Once you've obtained the best form suited to the excellent path, you'll fail to make strides in your journey. Therefore, strive to create all the causes for such a form, your three doors so sullied with negative karma and transgressions. It is especially vital to purify your karmic obscurations, so prioritize constant application of the four opponent powers. So these are right out of the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. When you look at this gets now into the medium scope section. So I read on a little bit too far. So now we're getting into this medium scope section. So the small scope is looking at how you will then get out of the lower realms of cyclic existence. And then here now, we're looking at how we then, I apologize, that was contained in the small scope. I'm doing this on the fly. That wasn't contained in the small scope. The four opponent powers are contained in the small scope. So under how to engage in virtuous activities and the application of the four opponent powers. I just misspoke, I apologize. So if I hadn't caught that, if you weren't cutting and rubbing, you might have misunderstood something. So I'm glad I caught it though. So that does fall into the small scope, where you're looking to engage in everything that you possibly can to not have a lower realm rebirth. Try to carry out instead each and every good that you can, and stop the slightest wrong of the many wrongs that you do. And try to, reverse attachment to this life. And it talks about that in Lama Tsongkhapa's three principal aspects of the path. This reversal of attraction to this life, wanting to focus on your future lives, wanting to be free from suffering in the lower realms in your future lives. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is by recognizing, the foundation of all good qualities is the teacher, and that you have this life of leisure and opportunity that is fleeting, and that death and impermanence will come, and that in the future you could go to the lower realms, and that you seek refuge, and you start to understand how karma works and what you need to abandon and what you need to do, and if you do something negative, how to purify it so that you aren't born in the lower realms. So this is the motivation here. The next category gets into the teachings for beings of medium capacity, which gets into the Four Noble Truths and shows us how to be ejected from cyclic existence, how to get out of cyclic existence altogether. And then the teachings for beings of great capacity show us how to become a Buddha. And we won't be able to get to too much more tonight, but we rely upon those practices I just mentioned in order to start to train our minds to be able to have the most suitable basis possible to continue our practice. And if we engage in these practices this way that is presented in the small scope, we've set ourselves up in a way in terms of our behavior and so forth that will allow us to be able to engage in the medium scope, where we engage in the three higher trainings of ethics, concentration, and wisdom in order to be free from cyclic existence. And that engagement is shown to us by the teaching of the Four Noble Truths. The first two noble truths, the truth of suffering and origin, that show us how we're bound to cyclic existence, and the last two noble truths, the truth of cessation and truth of path, that show us how we're unbound from cyclic existence. So by practicing three highest higher trainings, and by developing the wisdom that recognizes that things are empty of inherent existence, we can achieve the goal of the medium scope, which is freedom from cyclic existence, by relying upon the points that were put forth in the Four Noble Truths, convincing ourselves of a problem, convincing ourselves of the origin of the problem, convincing ourselves of how to get rid of the origin of the problem, working on getting rid of the origin of the problem, and then it's achieving a cessation, which is a freedom from cyclic existence. And then all of those things that are just mentioned are necessary to apply to the next stage of the teachings that the Buddha gave, the teachings for beings of great capacity, the Mahayana teachings. The previous scope, where we're just looking to get out of samsara for ourselves alone, or the Theravada or the Hinayana, or the teachings for the individual liberation vehicle, the Pali vehicle. The teachings for the Mahayana are all of those teachings have to be realized, and then bodhicitta is added. The bodhicitta, the mind that wishes to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, and the other cherishing attitude is added. So we're going to get into all of these in the coming weeks. We're going to get into exactly what these minds are and how we develop them. We've already gone over the medium scope, and I ended it last week, I said, but I guess we didn't end it, because I still want to show how Lama Tsongkhapa applies the abbreviated stages of the path of Lam Rim Din to these stanzas, to give a little bit more commentary on it, give you more flavor. I know we looked at the great treatise and the stages of the path to enlightenment in a bigger sense, but I thought I'd scale it down to a little smaller sense to see which things are the most palatable to all of you. So that's my plan, and I'm sticking to it, but we'll see how it goes. Hopefully I'll wake up tomorrow morning, because I won't be here next Thursday if I don't wake up tomorrow morning. But all we can do is continue to practice in the best way possible, and know that if we do so, we'll be as prepared for death as we possibly can be. And if we are prepared as possibly as we can be, then at the time of death, we don't have any regrets, because we know we will have known we've done everything we possibly can to do something about the time of death, and we'll acquire some tricks if we're listening loud enough, those tricks that will be able to allow us to, even if we aren't really prepared, kind of go-tos. If we have a spontaneous horrible event happen, go-tos that we can use in those times of crisis that will allow us to have a favorable rebirth, even though we may not have spiritually evolved enough. So I would listen as carefully as you possibly can if you're not sure what you would do if you were suddenly dying right now, because the Buddha teaches us exactly what we are supposed to do if we're suddenly dying right now, and how we can die the best way so that we're set up for spiritual progress in the future. Anyway, I hope that so your goal is to no longer exist. No, that's not true. Not true at all. Actually, the Jeff that's talking to you right now doesn't exist tomorrow because of temporal moments. And this moment ceases the second another moment arises. And this moment's Jeff is disintegrating momentarily. I'm undergoing momentary change, and I am not the same Jeff in 10 seconds that I was 10 seconds ago. So the goal is not to no longer exist. The goal is to no longer exist in a diluted fashion where you cherish yourself more than others. And the point of our suffering is because we've created causes for suffering. The reason that we have suffering is we've created causes in the past for suffering. I'm reading questions off the thing. If we don't have causes for suffering, we wouldn't suffer. Suffering is an impermanent phenomenon. Every impermanent phenomena has a cause. Every result has a cause. There's nothing with a result that doesn't have a cause. So suffering, what's the point of suffering? There is no point. There's no reason to have it because it can be gotten rid of. So the fact that we're suffering is our choice. And because we haven't put wisdom forth, we haven't engaged in studies, we haven't learned to cherish others more than ourselves yet. So therefore we have suffering because we've engaged in actions that cause suffering. That's it. I can't do any more. There's other people I promised we'd be done a minute ago. All right, that are on Zoom, and I try to keep as best I can to the time. But thank you all for the engagement. I'll leave the questions on from now. I used to turn them off because there were a lot of rude questions. There weren't really people who wanted to learn about Buddhism. They were just people who wanted to argue, and I am not really someone, if you're coming with illogical things that would be great to argue with, because I've studied logic and reasoning, and I don't want to spend time wasting folks' time who want to deal with illogical things. I want to spend time, appealing to those who have an open mind and want to learn about these things, and not say I want to be Buddhist. I want to say I want to hear what Buddhism said, what Buddha really presented. And then you be the judge of whether that's good for you or not. You don't have to tell me if it's good for me. I know it's good for me. You have to decide if it's good for you. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. And again, this information takes a long time to learn. It's been almost 30 years I've been studying Buddhism. So just because I can say a few things, I still have many, many, many more things that I'm confused about and need to learn. And by engaging in things like this, it helps me to clarify them. So I want to say thank you for your kind listening. And any mistakes that I've made, may they be purified by the Vajrasattva mantra. Om benzo sato samayam inapalaya benzo sato seno bajija didameva sudukayameva subukayameva anuragmeva savasiti me pracha savakama sutra me kitam shuyan kuruhum ha bhagavan savatata benzo mamim benzo vava maha samaya safa ahum fe. May we always be protected by Palden Lama. Jorama 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 Tunjagalar Jamorama Jadaja Tunjo Hongjo Hong. And by the way, Palden Lama is a Dharma protector who's just the wrathful emanation of Tara, the female Buddha. So she sometimes has to get tough and get tough for us and get tough for the Dharma. Like the question that was being asked, how could you be a police officer and follow these ideals? Well, Palden Lama is like the big police officer and can act wrathfully out of more love than you've ever known in your life. Wow, that's amazing when you think about what these beings can do. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well, with whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds from my two collections, vastest space, that I have amassed from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time. May I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose mind's wisdom eye is blinded by ignorance. Long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Chen Rezigan, our world right now, the wish-fulfilling jewel. It was so wonderful to see him the other night, looking so youthful and radiant and glowing, so wonderful. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. And a prayer of supplication to some of our root guru, my root guru, Kensei Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, who passed away a couple years ago, who I've never been closer to any other being than. Wow, he's so kind. So this is a prayer of supplication to him. Wherever he is, may he come back and help to fulfill our needs, which are having a teacher. That's all we need. That's the most important thing that we can have, is a teacher who can elucidate the path. And may Jeffrey Hopkins and Geshe Lobsang Gompo Rinpoche, all these beings come back to help us. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, all these beings come back to help us. But here this is written to Kensei Geshe Wandak Rinpoche. A complex yogi poses as a simple monk. Homage to Kensei Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music purified by Om Ah Om Om Ah Om Om Ah Om. The purity of having 1 million the rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like Atisha, who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond, and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears that elucidated the teachings for beings of three capacities. Now that sound has stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all of your teachers passed away and understood the sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations aren't transferred to them. It's by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. The sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us and of our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness so they know who you really are. Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate you listening, and I hope to see you next week. And I hope that you take these teachings and put them into practice. That's the only reason that they're here. They aren't here so that you can stack up information and sound more intelligent than someone else. They're here so that you can take this incredibly subtle information and apply it to the very complex mess that's in your mind, just like it's in my mind. If you don't have a mess in your mind, and if you experience bliss 24/7 and don't have suffering, you're probably here, as Geshe Dorje Damdula says, checking me. You don't need to hear anything that I have to say. But if that's not the case, then I hope that you apply these teachings, because you can have a state of 24/7 bliss, 24/7 freedom from suffering. You just have to put the practice in that makes the causes for that result. Without the cause, the result can't occur. Without the cause for suffering, the result can't occur. Without the cause of ignorance that gives rise to inappropriate attention, the contaminated afflictions, the gross afflictions and contaminated karmas and samsara can't occur. Let's hope that we start to unravel this mess so that we can be of aid to all sentient beings. Thank you. See you next time.